Shadows among stars. The acrid smell of burnt circuitry filled Commander Nathaniel Drake's nostrils as he stepped off the transport shuttle onto Station Helios. His uniform was tattered, stained with the remnants of the battle, oil, blood, and the strange purple substance that leaked from damaged terraforming equipment. The station administrator, a thin man with nervous eyes named Garrett Walsh, rushed toward him with the desperate relief of someone who had just witnessed salvation. "Commander Drake. We owe you our lives." Walsh grasped Drake's hand, shaking it vigorously. "If your vessel hadn't intercepted our distress call when it did." "Standard protocol," Drake interrupted, his voice gravelly from shouting orders through smoke-filled corridors. 20 years of military service had taught him to deflect gratitude. The truth, that he'd diverted his patrol vessel against direct orders, wasn't something he wished to discuss. The station was still recovering. Civilians cleared debris while medical teams treated the wounded. Children watched Drake with wide eyes as he followed Walsh through the corridors of the salvaged mining outpost. He tried to ignore their stares, the weight of their admiration pressing down on him like a physical thing. "The Colonial Oversight Committee wishes to express their deepest gratitude," Walsh continued, leading Drake toward a restricted section of the station. "They've authorized a special token of appreciation." Drake frowned. "Not necessary." Walsh keyed in an access code, revealing a sterile chamber. "Oh, but they insist." "Please." Inside stood a containment cell, and within it, a humanoid figure that made Drake's breath catch. The being was tall and slender with iridescent skin that shimmered between deep indigo and violet like the nebulae he'd navigated through his entire career. Delicate, feather-like appendages that might have been hair cascaded down its back, shifting colors with each subtle movement. But it was the eyes that captured him, solid black orbs that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "What is this?" Drake's voice had gone dangerously quiet. "A Lutherian," Walsh explained, unable to hide his excitement. "Captured during the raid. We believe she, at least, our xenobiologists think the term applies, was being transported by the pirates. Extremely rare species. Their biological composition alone makes them valuable to collectors and researchers." The Lutherian's face remained impassive, but Drake noticed a slight tensing of her shoulders. "And you're offering her to me as what, exactly?" Drake didn't bother hiding his disgust. "A reward, Commander. The Lutherians possess remarkable adaptive abilities. They make excellent companions." "You mean slaves?" Drake's hand moved instinctively to his sidearm. "Open the cell." Walsh's smile faltered. "Commander, perhaps you don't fully appreciate." "Open it. Now." Something in Drake's expression made Walsh hesitate, then comply. The transparent barrier slid away with a soft hiss. Drake met the Lutherian's gaze directly. "You're free to go," he said simply. The Lutherian didn't move. Her head tilted slightly, those black eyes studying him with unnerving intensity. "Did you hear me?" Drake asked. "You're free." "Freedom," she finally spoke, her voice like liquid crystal, both melodic and sharp, "is rarely offered without expectation of return. Then consider this the first genuine offer you've received from humanity," Drake replied, turning to leave. "Commander Drake." Her pronunciation of his name was precise, as if she'd been practicing it. "If you leave this facility, you will be dead within 3 planetary cycles." Drake paused mid-step, turning back toward her. Walsh had gone pale. "What did you say?" This, she gestured dismissively at the cell, was not a reward. It was a death sentence for us both. Drake's quarters aboard the transport vessel were Spartan, a narrow bunk, a desk barely large enough for his reports, and just enough floor space to pace, which he'd been doing for hours. The Lutherian, who had introduced herself as Vera, sat perfectly still on the edge of his bunk, her posture unnaturally rigid. "You could have escaped," Drake said for what must have been the 5th time. "Why stay with me?" "I told you they will kill you," Vera repeated, her midnight eyes fixed on him. But why do you care? Vera's gaze intensified. Among my people, a life dead is sacred. You freed me when you could have claimed ownership. That action created a bond. Drake ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair. There's no bond. I just did what any decent person would do. And that, she said, is precisely why I remained. The ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace for a navigation check. Drake glanced at the viewport, watching the stars snap into focus, cold, distant points of light, indifferent to the dramas played out beneath them. Tell me who's trying to kill me, he demanded. Those who sent me as your reward, she answered, contempt evident in her voice. I am not what they told you. I am not a scout for pirates. I was researching deep space anomalies when I discovered something I should not have. Which was? Evidence of systematic elimination of my kind. They captured me 2 cycles ago. When they learned of your diversion to save this station, they saw an opportunity. Drake leaned against the bulkhead. To what? Frame me for alien trafficking. To eliminate 2 problems at once, the hero who disobeyed orders and the witness who has seen too much. Before Drake could respond, the ship's alarm blared. Emergency lights bathed the cabin in crimson. Security breach, Deck 3, announced the automated system. All personnel, security protocols engaged. Drake's hand moved to his sidearm. They're here. Vera stood in one fluid motion. We must leave now. This is a transport vessel in the middle of space. There's nowhere to go. Her lips curled in what might have been a smile. There are always escape pods. Heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor. Drake glanced between the door and the alien who claimed to be saving his life. After you, he said. They fled through maintenance corridors, the sound of pursuit never far behind. Vera moved with silent grace despite her unfamiliarity with human vessels. At one junction, Drake hesitated, and she pulled him firmly to the left. How do you know the way? He whispered. I memorized the ship's schematics while in captivity, she replied matter-of-factly. Preparedness is survival. They reached the escape pod bay just as blaster fire erupted behind them. Drake slammed his palm on the launch controls as they dove inside, the door sealing a split second before the pod ejected into space. As the small craft tumbled away from the transport ship, Drake caught a glimpse of their pursuers through the viewport, black uniforms with no insignia, moving with military precision. Not pirates, he muttered, recognition dawning. Colonial Defense Force, Special Operations Division. His stomach twisted. Why would they? Vera's 6-fingered hand touched his arm, surprisingly warm. Now you begin to understand the scale of what we face. Drake stared at the navigation console, reality crashing down around him. He was now a fugitive from the government he'd served faithfully for 2 decades. Where do we go? He asked, more to himself than to her. Somewhere they will not think to look for a decorated colonial commander, she replied, her dark eyes reflecting the distant stars. Somewhere dead. The escape pod sensors screamed in protest as they entered the atmosphere of Perdition's Reach, a moon officially designated as uninhabitable on all colonial charts. The surface was a wasteland of twisted metal structures, failed terraforming experiments and poisonous fog. Are you sure about this? Drake shouted over the pod's groaning hull. No one voluntarily comes to a death world, Vera replied, her slender fingers dancing over the navigation controls with surprising familiarity. Which makes it perfect. The pod crashed more than landed, skidding across fractured ground before coming to rest against what might once have been an atmospheric processor. Drake's head slammed against the control panel, blood trickling from a gash above his eye. Perfect, he muttered, pressing a sleeve against the wound. Just perfect. They donned emergency atmospheric masks before venturing outside. The air was thick with yellow particulate that settled on their clothing like toxic snow. Every structure was corroded, half collapsed, nature reclaiming what human ambition had abandoned. We need shelter and a communications array, Vera said, scanning their surroundings. This was once a research station. It should have both. Drake followed her through the ruins, keeping his blaster ready. How do you know so much about an abandoned human research planet? Because it wasn't only used for human research. Her voice had gone flat, emotionless. They found the main research compound partially intact. Power systems were long dead, but emergency generators could be salvaged. As Drake worked to restore basic functions, Vera wandered deeper into the facility. Her cry echoed through the empty corridors. Drake sprinted toward the sound, blaster drawn, to find her kneeling in a large laboratory. The room was filled with preservation tanks, and in each. "Your people," he breathed, lowering his weapon. "Specimens. Dozens of them. Lotharians of various ages suspended in cloudy solution, tubes and sensors penetrating iridescent skin. Some were clearly dead. Others, Drake couldn't tell." Vera touched the glass of one tank, her fingers tracing the outline of a child's face. "My nestmate's offspring," she whispered. "Missing for 3 cycles. We believed she had been lost during a spatial anomaly." Drake felt sick. This can't be colonial-sanctioned research. "We have treaties with non-terrestrial species." "Treaties?" She spat the word. "While your diplomats spoke of peace and cooperation, your scientists were here learning how to destroy us most efficiently." A metallic clatter from the corridor froze them both. Drake raised his blaster, positioning himself between Vera and the doorway. "This facility has been abandoned for years," he whispered. "Not entirely," she replied, drawing her own weapon. The lights Drake had managed to restore flickered, plunging them into darkness before the emergency system bathed everything in blood-red glow. Something large moved in the shadows of the corridor. Not human. Not Lotharian. Maintenance droid? Drake suggested without conviction. A hulking silhouette appeared in the doorway, a security mech. Its once polished carapace now corroded and dented. Its optical sensors focused on them, glowing an ominous red. "Intruder alert," it announced in a distorted electronic voice. "Containment breach. Initiating quarantine protocol. Run." Drake fired 3 shots that bounced harmlessly off the mech's armored shell. They fled deeper into the facility, the heavy metallic footsteps of the security unit echoing behind them. More droids were activating, they could hear them throughout the complex, systems coming online after years of dormancy. "In here." Vera pulled Drake into what appeared to be a control room, sealing the reinforced door behind them. "That won't hold them for long," Drake said, scanning the room for another exit. "We might gain advantage." Vera moved to a still-functional terminal. "If the security system is online, so is the main database." The pounding on the door began, metal fists denting the reinforced barrier. "Whatever you're doing, do it faster," Drake urged, positioning himself to fire the moment the door gave way. "I need time," she replied, her face illuminated by the screen's glow. "The system contains records of all operations conducted here. Staff logs, research protocols, funding authorizations." The door groaned under repeated impacts. "We won't get another chance," she said urgently. "This could prove who authorized the research. Names, dates, official seals." Drake made a decision. "Download what you can. I'll buy you time." Before she could object, he slipped through a maintenance hatch in the ceiling. The narrow duct system would be too small for the security mechs. He crawled through the claustrophobic passages until he found what he was looking for, a junction box controlling power to the sector. With a deep breath, Drake fired his blaster at the junction box. Sparks flew, and darkness engulfed the facility again. The security mechs would have backup power, but they'd be temporarily disoriented. He made his way back to the control room through pitch darkness. "Vera?" "Here," her voice came from near the terminal. "I got it. Everything." A mechanized voice boomed through the facility, emergency protocols activated. Facility self-destruct sequence initiated. 10 minutes to detonation. They can't let evidence survive, Drake realized. We need to move. Now. They navigated the darkened quarters by the light of Vera's data pad, the red countdown pulsing on every operational screen they passed. Security Mech still patrolled, moving with eerie precision despite the darkness, forcing them to take a circuitous route back to the entrance. 7 minutes to detonation. We'll never make it to the escape pod in time, Drake said as they reached the main entrance, now sealed by emergency protocols. Vera studied the massive doors. We don't need to. She pointed to a smaller hatch. Maintenance access leads directly to the surface. And then what? We're still stranded on a death world. She pulled up schematics on her data pad. There's an emergency shuttle bay 2 kilometers north. Standard protocol for research outposts this remote. If it's still there after all these years. We have no choice. 5 minutes to detonation. The maintenance tunnel was narrow and sloped steeply upward. They emerged onto the planet's toxic surface just as the first underground explosions began, the ground trembling beneath their feet. Run! Drake shouted, though the word was unnecessary. They sprinted across the blighted landscape, atmospheric masks barely filtering the poisonous air, each breath burning their lungs. The research facility collapsed behind them, explosions sending debris hundreds of meters into the air. The shock wave knocked them forward, Drake instinctively shielding Vera with his body as they hit the ground. When the dust settled, they continued north, following Vera's scanner. Just as the toxic atmosphere began overwhelming their mask filters, they spotted it, a small shuttle hangar, partially buried by years of corrosive storms. 2 minutes of oxygen left, Drake reported, checking his mask's indicator. They forced the hangar doors open to find a single shuttle, covered in dust but remarkably intact, protected from the worst of the planet's environmental damage. Can you fly it? Drake asked as they climbed inside. Vera took the pilot's seat. My people were navigating stars while yours were still perfecting the wheel, she replied with unexpected humor. The engines coughed to life as they shed their masks inside the pressurized cabin. Through the viewport, they watched the last of the research facility disappear in a spectacular chain of explosions. They tried to bury their secrets, Vera said, activating the launch sequence. But now we have the names of everyone involved. She held up the data pad. Including your Director Jensen's authorization codes on every experiment. As the shuttle broke atmosphere, leaving the death world behind, Drake couldn't shake the feeling that they had escaped one trap only to fly directly into another. But the evidence they now carried made the risk worthwhile. Set course for Outpost Vega, he said. I know someone there who might help us. Vera's black eyes met his, reflecting the stars they now traveled among. The hardest journey still lies ahead. The betrayer's truth. Outpost Vega is still 3 hours out, Vera said, her slender fingers adjusting the shuttle's navigational controls. If we maintain this trajectory, we should avoid the main patrol routes. Drake nodded, examining the data they'd retrieved from Perdition's reach. The evidence was more damning than he could have imagined, detailed protocols for Letharian containment, biological experimentation logs spanning years, genetic sequencing of various Letharian subgroups, and worst of all, deployment strategies for something called Substance P-47. This isn't just research, he muttered, scrolling through files. It's systematic extermination planning. Vera's normally stoic expression faltered. My people sensed something was happening. Settlements on the outer rim reported unexplained illnesses, then communications would cease entirely. When investigators arrived, they found only abandoned outposts. We attributed it to cosmic phenomena or migration. While my government was conducting field tests. Drake's voice was hollow. Not your government, Vera corrected. A faction within it. These authorizations don't carry full Colonial Council approval, only specific departments and individuals. Drake's eyes narrowed as a familiar name appeared on multiple authorization forms. Director Jensen. Head of Colonial Defense Special Research Division. He had met her once, years ago, a cold, efficient woman with unwavering conviction in humanity's right to dominate the stars. She's coordinating everything. The shuttle's proximity alarm blared, interrupting their discovery. Colonial patrol vessel, Vera reported, checking the scanner. Heavy cruiser class. They shouldn't be able to track us through the asteroid field, Drake said, moving to the tactical station. They're not tracking us, Vera replied, her voice tight. They're on course for Outpost Vega. On the view screen, the small mining and refueling station orbited a distant dwarf star. The colonial vessel was approaching rapidly, weapon systems active. This isn't a standard patrol, Drake realized. It's a raid. Vera pulled up the outpost manifest. Civilian station. 132 registered occupants, including 26 children. They must suspect it's being used by smugglers or resistance, Drake said, his mind racing through options. Or they're making an example. We should change course, Vera said flatly. Find another way to contact your friend. Drake stared at the tactical display, at the colonial patrol ship closing in on the unsuspecting outpost. Those people don't stand a chance. Neither do we if we're captured, she countered. The data from Perdition's reach is too important to risk. So we just let them die? Drake demanded. Her black eyes met his. Sometimes to win the war, you must sacrifice a battle. Drake's jaw tightened. There had to be another way. He studied the navigation charts, an idea forming. What if we give them something else to chase? What do you mean? The Perdition's reach data. We send part of it, enough to be convincing but not the core evidence, on an automated transmission to the outpost. Make it look like a resistance communication. His fingers flew across the controls. The patrol will intercept it, divert to track the source, and leave the outpost alone. But we lose valuable data, Vera objected. Not the most crucial parts. We keep the pathogen formula, the deployment plans. Just give them the peripheral research data. Vera was silent for a long moment. My people died for this information. And more will die if we do nothing. Drake met her gaze. Sometimes we have to sacrifice something important to save what's irreplaceable. After a tense pause, she nodded once. Do it. Drake packaged a portion of the data, enough to be tantalizing but not devastating if in colonial hands, and transmitted it to the outpost with deliberately weak encryption. Within minutes, the patrol ship changed course, abandoning its approach to the outpost and setting off in pursuit of the data source. As they altered course to avoid detection, Vera watched the patrol ship disappear from their scanners. Those scientists, she said quietly. The ones who experimented on my people. I wonder if they made similar choices, sacrificing some to save others. Drake had no answer. You look terrible for a dead man, Victor, Drake said. The figure removed his respirator, revealing a scarred face and a wry smile. Funny. I was about to say the same to you. Victor Renner had been Drake's intelligence officer during the border conflicts, reportedly killed in action 4 years ago. They stood in the back room of a salvage yard on Helios Minor, a dwarf planet on the edge of colonial space. Alliance has a galaxy-wide alert out for you, Renner continued. Treason, alien trafficking, murder. Impressive list. All lies, Drake said. Obviously. The Nathaniel Drake I knew couldn't lie to save his life. Too damn honorable. Renner turned his attention to Vera. And you brought company. She saved my life, Drake explained. She's the reason you need saving in the first place, Renner leaned forward. No offense, Blue Lady, but your kind brings nothing but trouble. Trouble, Vera replied coolly, finds those who have something worth taking. Renner laughed, a rough sound like gravel in a steel drum. I like her. He turned serious. You said you have evidence of something big. Something worth dying for. Drake slid a data chip across the table. Worth dying for, worth living for, worth fighting for. Renner examined the chip without inserting it into a reader. And what exactly am I looking at? Proof that elements within the Alliance are conducting genocide against the Lotharian people, disguised as research, hidden even from the military. Renner whistled low. That's a bold claim. It's all there, Drake insisted. Research data, test subjects, deployment plans. And what do you want me to do with it? Help us find others who will stand against this, Vera said. Your kind is not all cruel, just as mine is not all innocent. But this, she gestured to the chip, this is evil without purpose. Renner pocketed the chip. I might know some people. A network of sorts. He glanced around the dingy room, then lowered his voice. Meet me at these coordinates in 12 hours. You'll find friends there. As he passed Drake a scrap of paper, he added, watch your back and hers. You're stirring up something bigger than you know. I'm already a dead man walking according to the Alliance, Drake replied. Not much left to lose. Renner's smile vanished. That's where you're wrong, Hart. There's always more to lose. The coordinates led them to an abandoned mining asteroid, hollowed out by centuries of resource extraction and repurposed as a meeting ground for those who existed in the shadows between worlds. Drake and Vera arrived early, scanning for traps or surveillance. Your friend Renner, Vera said as they secured the perimeter. You trust him? Drake checked the power cell on his blaster. We fought together for 4 years. He saved my life more times than I can count. And yet you believed him dead. That's different. The Alliance reported him killed in action. The same Alliance that is now hunting you, she pointed out. Before Drake could respond, the soft hum of approaching vehicles reached them. Lights appeared at the far end of the cavernous meeting space, 3 transport shuttles, unmarked. Renner emerged from the lead vehicle, followed by a diverse group of figures, humans, yes, but also species Drake recognized from border worlds, and some he'd never seen before. Among them, he spotted 2 Lotharians. Your people, he said to Vera, whose posture had subtly shifted at the sight of her kind. Survivors, she corrected. Like me. Renner approached, arms spread in a gesture of transparency. Sorry for the theatrics. Had to make sure we weren't followed. The group converged in the center of the cavern. Renner made introductions with practiced efficiency. Dr. Evelyn Frost, he said, gesturing to a slender human woman with prematurely white hair and calculating eyes. She offered a curt nod. Former head geneticist for Alliance Biological Research, defected when she discovered what her work was being repurposed for. I created vaccines, Dr. Frost said, her voice tight with barely controlled rage. They twisted my research into weapons. The director who oversees the Lotharian project is my former mentor. This is personal. Next came a towering figure with augmented limbs and a face crisscrossed with old burned scars. Darius, Renner introduced. Ex-Alliance Special Forces. His unit was ordered to clean up a Lotharian settlement after a containment breach. When he refused, they tried to add him to the body count. I buried my squad instead, Darius said flatly. Been helping others escape ever since. A young woman stepped forward, her Alliance military uniform modified and stripped of insignias, her dark eyes fierce and determined. Lieutenant Olivia Thorne, she said before Renner could introduce her. Former Alliance Internal Security. I accessed files I shouldn't have. Saw things I wasn't supposed to see. She glanced at Vera. I've been feeding information to the Resistance for 2 years. The last human in the group was an older man with weathered skin and steady hands. Jax Reardon, Renner said. Best communications specialist in 3 sectors. Can crack any encryption, access any channel, and make sure nobody traces it back. Former Alliance Communications Corps, Reardon added with a wink, before I developed this inconvenient conscience. Finally, Renner gestured to the two Letharians, one male with darker blue skin than Vera, and one female whose skin had a greenish tint. Zivin and Mira. They've been helping us map the Alliance's biological research stations and identify potential targets. Mira stepped toward Vera, their eyes meeting in silent communication. We thought all the scouts were lost, she said softly. I am the last, Vera replied. The group converged, sharing information, comparing data and testimonies. A resistance, Drake realized. Small, disparate, but united by knowledge of Alliance atrocities. They had been gathering evidence, building networks, preparing for, what? Revolution? Exposure? Justice? Dr. Frost examined the data from Perdition's reach, her face growing paler. This is Jensen's work. She's advanced the pathogen beyond what I thought possible. Her hands shook slightly. We have days, not weeks, before deployment. Thorne pulled up a holographic map. The primary production facility is here, she said, highlighting a space station orbiting a gas giant. Heavily guarded, but I still have access codes that might work. Might? Darius raised an eyebrow. Better than nothing, she shot back. Unless you've got a stealth cruiser hidden somewhere. Reardon studied the facility schematics. Communications hub is located here. If we can access it, I can broadcast to every system in the quadrant. No way for them to shut it down fast enough. Drake was so engrossed in their planning that he almost missed it, the slight shift in air flow, the subtle change in ambient noise. Down, he shouted, tackling Vera to the ground as the first shots blazed across the chamber. Black uniformed operatives poured in from concealed entrances, weapons firing with surgical precision. The resistance fighters returned fire, scrambling for cover behind vehicles and equipment. Betrayed, Vera hissed, drawing a slender blade from her boot as she rolled behind a cargo container. Or they were tracking us all along, Drake replied, squeezing off 3 shots that dropped an advancing operative. Dr. Frost created a makeshift energy barrier with a device from her pack, her hands steady despite the chaos. It won't hold for long, she warned, adjusting controls as blaster fire dissipated against the shield. We need an exit strategy.